senior producer from NFL Films, also one of the co-hosts of the ESPN NFL Matchup show. And I can tell you, Bills fans, if you're all antsy Saturday night into Sunday morning and you can't sleep, all you got to do is turn on ESPN, and at 5:30 a.m. you will see this man in the NFL Matchup show. It's one Greg Cosell. And, Greg, I'm going to tell you right now.
Because we shot it today, and I figured since this is Championship Sunday, I'd keep my coat and tie on because this is an important game, and I figured I'd try to, look important.
Well,
I don't know if it's working or not, but I'm trying.
It's
Greg,
not how you feel, it's how you look.
That's
Greg.
right. But, Greg,
I'm
not even kidding you when I say this. There are a lot of Bills fans who literally, once they get to Friday, they can't sleep. So there'll be a lot of people looking for something to watch. So Sunday morning, 5:30, Greg Cosell, Sal Paolantonio, Matt Bowen, go tune in to ESPN. They'll be ready talking about this game. So there'll be fans losing sleep this weekend.
Does it mean it's a light work week for you with just 2 games on the schedule?
Well, you know what it means, Steve, believe it or not, and just to show you how nuts I am, because obviously there's not as much tape for me to watch. Now, I don't just watch the 2. When we get to this point in the season, I don't just watch the games from the previous week. I go back through the season because in our system, I can pull out specific kinds of things. So I do that. But as it gets later in the week, we're done. So I've already started watching college players for the draft.
Okay,
Greg, you're a goner.
I know, I'm lost. I'm lost. And I probably won't be found anytime soon.
So, Greg, I wanted to begin with a couple of things with respect to the Chiefs' defense. Back in Week 6, L'Jarius Sneed was on IR. He did not play in this game against the Bills.
Right.
And they had to use Tyrann Mathieu a little bit more in a coverage role at times. And obviously when Sneed is healthy, that does not happen. Mathieu gets to play, rover, kind of a safety role more so. So I was impressed to see how much Kansas City plays dime. The third most in the league. I mean, 35% of their defensive snaps in dime. So maybe tell me a little bit about what they do in that dime package that the Bills have to be aware of.
Here's the way I see it. And actually, we did a whole segment on this in the matchup show. I think let's look at it from the perspective of the Bills and Josh Allen versus what you're talking about, Chris. I think when it comes to the Bills, we know that Josh Allen this year has been better versus man coverage than zone coverage, and the numbers bear that out. Now, I think he's gotten better versus zone as the years progressed and as he's gained more experience. But what Steve Spagnuolo does really, really well, and they do it predominantly out of dime, is disguise and late movement to cover 2, or you could even call it 2 robber because of the way they use Tyrann Mathieu. But the key is it's disguised before the snap of the ball. You don't necessarily know pre-snap that they're going to this. So I think one of the critical elements in this game is how Josh Allen and the Bills offense, it's not just Josh, how Josh and the Bills offense reacts to the disguise and the late movement. And in fact, Matt Bowen did a piece on the Chiefs part of that, and I did a piece. It was the 36-yarder that Josh threw to Stephon Diggs against the Colts, where they didn't do exactly the same thing the Chiefs do, but it was late movement right at the snap of the ball by the Colts, and both Stephon Diggs, he made an adjustment on his route, and Josh recognized the exact same thing. So I think, Chris, that's going to be a really important part of this game, how Josh and the Bills offense reacts to that disguise and late movement.
Those type of adjustments are, and you think back to the Week 6 matchup of these teams, are the Bills better equipped or more ready to beat the Chiefs now than they were then?
Without question, because Josh has grown. He's seen more. You can just tell by the way he plays. He's more in command. It doesn't appear watching him now that he's fooled by things. But again, it's a championship game. Steve Spagnuolo will have a few wrinkles, I'm sure. So I just think that's something to watch for in this game. And by the way, having said that, it's not as if the Chiefs will never play man-to-man. It's just something that Steve Spagnuolo does really well, and it's something that they hang their hat on because Mathieu, you'd love to be able to teach a kid to do what Mathieu does with his feel, his awareness, and his instincts. I hate the word instincts, but it kind of fits here. But he's just one of those guys.
And then, Greg, flipping it around to Kansas City's offense, their red zone touchdown efficiency has been sputtering a little bit of late.
Yes.
I think it's their last 24 red zone possessions. only 10 touchdowns, 11 field goals. It's about 10% below what their season average was in the red zone. They were a middle of the pack team, around 61% success rate. And it showed up again last week against Cleveland. They were 2 of 5 down there in the red zone. What is the sticking point for them, if you've seen anything that's stood out to you?
Well, it's funny because, they scored 2 red zone touchdowns in the Week 6 game, both to Kelsey, both came against the Bills, high percentage split safety coverages in the red zone. One was they got Kelsey kind of matched on Edmonds by the route combination. Right. He caught a touchdown. The other was your classic kind of cover 2 touchdown with kind of a smash concept, kind of a flat 7 concept. And Steve knows exactly what I'm talking about. And they hit Kelsey on that. But the Chiefs tend to be very multiple with their concepts in the red zone. They get Tyreek Hill involved with a lot of backfield action. They get Hardman involved with a lot of backfield action. Those plays have not worked over the last number of weeks. So that has really limited their red zone TD production. So we'll see if they continue to do those kinds of things, or knowing what they're going to get from the Bills, assuming that Sean and Leslie don't change up dramatically, which I doubt they will at this time of the year. They pretty much know what they'll get from the Bills. They may just try to design route concepts that beat split safety coverage.
Why have the Chiefs' red zone defense been so poor this year, and can the Bills take advantage of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, the Bills have been good with Josh in the red zone. I know his numbers. Chris, you probably know those right off the top of your head better than I do, but I know the numbers are pretty darn good for Josh Allen in the red zone, are they not?
Yeah, 42 touchdowns in his career, no picks, and I think he's got 24 rushing touchdowns as well.
Yeah, and I think you always have to, Steve, for the Bills, if you're the Chiefs, you always have to be aware of the designed run game with Josh in the red zone, and also his ability to run in the red zone when it's not by design. So you have that added element with Josh Allen in the red zone, which is very, very difficult to defend. The Chiefs, to me, they're kind of an odd defensive team. I think Spagnuolo does a really, really good job with his tactics, his design. But I don't view the Chiefs as a shutdown defense. I think you can beat them on the outside, in my view. They play, as Chris said, they play a lot of dime. I think Fenton is due back this week. He'll become, I think, their dime corner, because what they've done is Snead has played inside, because I think Breeland is good to go. Right. So Snead will play inside as one slot. And when they're in nickel, it'll be Snead. And then I think it'll probably be Fenton playing the other slot when they go to dime.
Has there been anybody in the Bills' schedule this year that can compare with the Chiefs' offense with Kelsey and Tyreek Hill? I know they're a unique group, but, the tight end that they use so much and is such a huge part, I don't know that there's anybody they face that is comparable.
No, and particularly, there's one thing I really specifically wanted to mention, because I'm so curious to see how Sean and Leslie match up to this. The Chiefs line up with Kelsey as the single receiver to the short side of the field, with 3 wide receivers to the wide side, and they put Tyreek Hill in the inside slot. That is very, very difficult to defend. They line up in that quite a bit. I think they've done that particular look well over 100 times this year. The touchdown we just see right here came out of that formation, and the Browns stayed in his own concept, which put Denzel Ward on Kelsey as the single receiver to the boundary side of the formation. And Kelsey looked like, a big kid, and Ward looked like a 9th grader on that play. So the question is, how will the Bills match up? Normally, Tre'Davious White is the boundary corner. Will he match up to Kelsey in those situations? So I think that's a particular formation and personnel package that you have to be able to defend when you play the Chiefs.
Yeah, and Tre'Davious White matched up on him the most in the meeting in Week 6, but I have to believe that Milano's presence in the lineup could have an impact on maybe how they mix up those coverages through the course of the game on him. I mean, he's a headache for everybody, but...
You could be right. But if they put Milano out there, then you would think, nothing's 100%, that they'd be playing a man concept, not a zone concept.
Right.
So we'll see if they feel comfortable matching up man-to-man because there's some difficult matchups here. I mean, obviously the last thing you want to do, it didn't happen in the Week 6 game, but that was an odd game to me. The weather was bad. It was a Clyde Edwards-Helaire game. I'd be very surprised if the Chiefs come out in this game and decide that they're going to be run heavy. That would surprise me. Plus, I think the Bills have played much better against the run recently.
We're talking to Greg Cosell from NFL Films and the ESPN NFL Matchup show. Greg, Steve and I have knocked this around this week. While everybody's busy talking about Patrick Mahomes' concussion protocol, Steve and I have been talking about his toe injury, which did limit his mobility in last week's game. And, I guess we'll have to see when we get to the game, but how much do you feel that compromises or could compromise what Patrick Mahomes does? It's not like they run him out on boots a lot like the Rams do with Goff, but, I mean, he relies on his mobility to extend plays. How much of an impact could that have?
It's a big impact. I don't believe any quarterback has converted more third down scrambling than Patrick Mahomes this year, and it's a big impact. And by the way, he's been running more. So I think because there's been kind of a looseness and undisciplined nature to his game over the last month, he's still obviously a great quarterback, and he can compensate for that because he can make incredible off-schedule plays. But he's been a little looser the last month. So that running part to his game, not design runs, I'm talking about scrambling out of the pocket, that's an important piece of his game, Chris. So, obviously, look, we know how coaches are. Sean and Leslie are not going to say, he's not going to run. We don't have to worry about it. We won't know till we see the game and watch Mahomes move around. But that has been an important part of what they do.
What does it take away from the Chiefs if he can't, run the quarterback option, if he can't run a design play, or if he's unable or unwilling to spread out and run for 14 yards for a first down? You know what I'm saying? How does that change, and how much of their offense does that really take off the table, if any?
Well, obviously that's hard to answer because those plays are not structured. Steve, you don't roll the ball out in practice this week and say, hey, Patrick, when it gets to be third down, you just drop back and run around. That's not the way it's done. But it does take away an element that makes critical plays in critical moments. And that's an important piece of what ends up happening in a game. It's not coached that way, but it's like with Josh, when he rolls out, when he feels pressure and runs to his right and makes an unbelievable throw, you're not in practice saying, hey, Josh, just roll out and run to the right whenever you feel like it. Who cares? It's not coached that way, but those things happen in games, and they happen increasingly so as more and more quarterbacks like Mahomes and Allen have movement ability.
Greg, we were talking about this on the show yesterday. The Bills' approach in Week 6 was dare the Chiefs to run, nothing cheap, nothing deep, keep everything in front of them, and the Chiefs obliged to the tune of 245 rushing yards. I know the Bills' run defense is better, but flipping it around to Steve Spagnuolo, I can't help but wonder, Zach Moss out for the rest of the playoffs, Devin Singletary, not the kind of running back that's going to bust one for 60 yards and a touchdown. That's not who he is. Does Steve Spagnuolo go light in the box and invite this Bills offense to try to run the football and try to beat them that way? I'm wondering if he gives them kind of a similar game plan to the one he gave the Chiefs offense in Week 6.
I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. Look, he knows what the Bills offense is. It's built on Josh. Last week, as you guys know, their first 20 plays were called passes. They did not have a called running play until the 21st offensive snap. Now, they did come out in the third quarter, and they obviously talked about this at halftime and put Josh under center and then ran the ball a little bit. Obviously, they said, hey, let's do that. But that's not who they are, and that's not what they're going to do as a foundational approach. Yeah, might they run it a few more times? Sure. But I think they feel very comfortable putting the ball in Josh Allen's hands, and the reason they feel comfortable is now his command. He doesn't turn the ball over. So this is a passing team. I would not be surprised if Steve Spagnuolo says, hey, you know what? Let's play the game in nickel. Let's play the game in dime. And if they want to hand it off, more power to them. They've not shown really that they're explosive with the run game, and we want to defend the pass because that's the way we're going to lose this game, with explosive pass plays.
One of the ways the Chiefs defend the pass with Tyrann Mathieu. Talk to Bills fans who have heard of him, but give us a synopsis of why he's really, really a dynamite safety.
Well, first of all, he can do so many things, and they use him that way. He can play on the back end. He can play in the box. He can match up man-to-man on both wide receivers and tight ends. He'll line up man-to-man on slot receivers. They use him in that coverage I was speaking about earlier, whether you want to just call it cover two or two robber, where he's that middle hole defender, and he just has such a great feel for reading both the quarterback and route concepts. So to me, he's the reason that the Chiefs defense can do all the multiple things that they do, because he has such a great feel. He's aware. He's smart. I mean, he's as versatile a safety as there is in the NFL.
I don't know if I've got anything else. We've talked about 15 different ways to Sunday on this game, Greg. And I'm like, I swear I'm tapped out. Quick thoughts on the NFC title game, though. Bucks, Packers, two offenses. It would seem, at least on paper, that the Bucks maybe have more talent top to bottom on their roster, and might be perceived as the more complete team. But I got to tell you, I love Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith as a combo on the defensive side of the ball for Green Bay. I think those two guys are very underrated. What are your thoughts at first blush with this game?
Well, they played a Week 6 game as well, in which the Bucks just blitzed and were really multiple with everything they did. And obviously that was the worst Packers offensive game of the season, Rodgers' worst game. The Bucks will blitz again, but I can't imagine it's going to play out the same way. What you talked about with the Packer defense will be interesting, because you talked about the Chiefs playing dime. Mike Pettin has played with 6 defensive backs, Chris, on 50% of their defensive snaps, far and away the highest total in the NFL. He wants to play in his nickel and dime. And now that we know Antonio Brown is out, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Bucks play a lot with 2 tight ends. Gronkowski, obviously, and Cameron Brate's really come on the last couple of weeks. And then sort of see how Mike Pettin reacts. Will he stay with nickel and dime? Will he put his base defense on the field, which I don't think he really wants to do.
Yeah, and if he does put base on the field, Gronkowski ends up being kind of a big go-to there. They'll split him out and all those tight ends out, and Rodgers will find him. They're trying to get him manned up, right? I mean, that's right. You do this, we do that kind of thing. If you're going to react with personnel, we're going to get you in the matchup you don't want.
The other reason I think that Mike Pettin will stay with his DBs is I think he'll have no problem with the Bucks turning around and handing it off to Fournette or Jones, feeling, hey, if you want to hand it off, that's fine. You hand it off. Fournette's not looked particularly good. Jones played last week and had a little more juice. But I think that Pettin would be concerned about the pass game. That's where the explosive plays come from.
Greg, as always, thanks for the time. We'll look for you on the matchup show this weekend. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.